Hello, everyone. Welcome back to I See What You're Saying, the Disciplined Listening Podcast. I'm Michael Reddington, and today it is my pleasure to welcome our next guest, Melissa Dinwiddie. Melissa is an innovation strategist and keynote speaker. She is the founder of Creative Sandbox Solutions and author of The Creative Sandbox Way. She teaches leaders how to break through their creative barriers in order to identify innovative problem-solving techniques. This is a great conversation, lots of ingenuity, and I really appreciate the level of vulnerability and honesty that she brings into the conversation about her own personal experiences and how she ended up where she is today. We're going to talk about many things, but she is going to start off by highlighting how we can be creative even when we don't see ourselves as creative people. How labels and our internal monologue and other expectations can limit the creativity that's been lying dormant in front of us the whole time. She's going to talk about the marriage between creativity and problem solving, give several different examples of how they overlap and feed each other. She's going to break down her very interesting 3-step creative framework, which has all kinds of layers of psychological advantages that opens up new techniques and opportunities for us. It really is a great conversation. I'm so happy for all that she took the time to share, and I'm really looking forward to y'all learning from her today as well. Thank you very much for taking a few minutes to join us today. Please, while you're with us, just take a second, subscribe to the show, like it, share the show with your network. Certainly let us know what you'd like to hear more of. And while you're online, take a few moments just to check out our sponsors. First, we have HumanTell. Please head over to humantell.com. That's where you can learn how to identify when people's emotions are likely shifting by identifying changes in their facial expressions and nonverbal behavior. While you're there, enter the code INQUASIVE25 for 25% off their best-in-class online training. For the professional interviewers, please head over to certifiedinterviewer.com. That's where you'll get all your questions answered about the Certified Forensic Interviewer designation and the International Association of Interviewers. And while you're online, please check out inquasive.com to learn more about the programs our clients ask us to customize for their senior leaders, sales teams, and beyond to teach them how to unlock hidden value in all of their high-impact conversations. We really appreciate you being here for today for another episode. Thank you so much. So now, without further ado, I introduce to you, Melissa Dinwiddie. Hello, Melissa. It is great to meet you. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on your show.
Oh, I'm really looking forward to it. Thank you very much for sharing the time. And without getting into the details, being flexible with the scheduling, I really appreciate you working with me and having the chance to talk with you today and really learn from you, because I think the topic that you teach around, I don't know if teach is the perfect word to use, but support people, teach, consult around is really important for all of us, because how we see ourselves and what we're capable of often aren't necessarily the same thing.
That is so true. And as I like to say, it's really hard to be creative if you think you're not. So that's really, really my sweet spot. And so here's the thing, Michael, I have a background as a multifaceted creative. I trained as a dancer at Juilliard and had this 15-year business as a visual artist and performed and toured as a jazz singer-songwriter and still perform as an improviser. And what most people are really surprised to learn is that I spent 15 years believing that I was a non-creative person, not just a non-artist, but a non-creative person. So I really relate to the folks that I work with who identify as non-creatives. And, we have this really weird thing in our, business world, in just sort of the world in general, where we have the creatives, this department, the creative department that does the marketing, et cetera, and everybody else. And so it's very easy. It's, just a product of the English language. I don't know, but so it's very easy for everybody else who's not in the creative department to think, well, they're the creatives, therefore we're not creative over here, which of course is a falsehood. That's not the case at all. We're all creative by virtue of being human, but we've also got this weird sort of binary thing going on where we put this, I'm gonna make a little sign over here with this little category over here in the corner of the arts. The drawing and painting and music and film and this little category over here, and we put a label on that as that's creativity, and then everything else is not creativity. And that's also not true, because creativity, we use our creativity every day. Oh my God, I have to make dinner. What's in the refrigerator? That's using our creativity. We got to solve a problem of any kind. That's creativity. We have to somehow connect dots. That's creativity. Creativity is really, I mean, I just consider it anytime you have to solve a problem, anytime you have to take an item over here and combine it with an item over there. Any of those things are creativity. Anytime you're taking either creating something new that didn't exist before, or transforming something, taking something and turning it into something new, taking two things and combining them, those are all examples of creativity. And they don't necessarily have to do with art at all. Now, my preferred way, or one of my most fun ways of being creative, is through various different types of art forms, but that may not be your way of being creative.
And that individual aspect is important, because we all experience life differently. We all experience problems differently. So we can all experience creativity differently. And I think you made so many great points right there out of the gate, just getting started. But even just associating creativity with problem solving. I don't necessarily like when people, and you didn't say this, but when people say like, think outside of the box, I feel like even saying that is a limiting way to look at things. Like there shouldn't be a box to begin with. The rules were a fabrication that limit our ability to do other things. Like I could probably go down rabbit holes that maybe I'm not super qualified to go down. But the way our self-images guide us. My friend Kwame Christian recently said that we will never outperform our self-image. I think that was his quote. We can never outperform our self-image. And when he read that, I didn't know whether to thank him or swear at him for how that resonated with me. But he's absolutely right. And I feel like that relates to what you're saying. So before I just jump down the problem solving rabbit hole, which is sort of like my reflex where I want to go, let's get back to the creative piece first. So even just looking at myself growing up, and to this day, my brother is very artistic. He can draw, he can paint. He's also a master mechanic and can fix anything. And so to me, it's not a surprise that those things overlap. To me, I was never much of a drawer. I was never much of an artist. Talking, I guess, is sort of what I do. So you could go that route. But I didn't have those artistic or creative skills that John did or does. So oftentimes the conversation growing up in our house, to your point, was John is the artist. John is the creative one. Mike's not. Now, my parents didn't harm me in any way, shape, or form talking that way. Let's be clear. But you just a reference in my life to your point. How do we see ourselves? What's being creative? What's not? So how do you connect with people who don't see themselves as being creative and help them shift that perspective and unlock the inner creativity that's been lurking inside this whole time?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I do is I typically will share my story. And initially they feel often like, well, I can't relate to this person because she has all these different ways of expressing herself in these artistic ways. I'm not that. That doesn't, I don't get that at all. And then I share that I identified as a non-creative person for, a big chunk of my life, which, often gets the head tilt, and I can't relate to that at all. And then I typically, when I'm working with folks, I use play-based activities. So everything I do is play-based. So I will use things like, for example, I have an activity that I call crappy doodles. So everyone's afraid of drawing. I mean, unless they're an artist, unless they're somebody who identifies as like, drawing is my skill, drawing is the thing that that's my genius zone. Everybody else has been scarred around drawing. A teacher told them you can't draw. A teacher told them horses aren't shaped like that or whatever. And so they have been terrified to pick up a pen and draw for the rest of their lives. So I lower the bar And I say, we're not drawing. We're not making art. We're intentionally making crappy doodles. And here's the rule with crappy doodles. We're not making art. We're putting ideas down on paper in visual form. And you have 60 seconds. First, you're going to come up with some kind of a, whatever it is. I give them a prompt. It's, a problem that you're experiencing or a challenge or a vision or something like that. And here's the rule with crappy doodles. Whatever you say it is, that's what it is. So if you make a scribble and you say it's your ideal customer, it's your ideal customer. If you make a scribble and you say it's world peace, it's world peace. So you can make a stick figure, you can make a scribble, it can be abstract, it can be whatever you want it to be. Doesn't matter. And you're going to have 60 seconds. So it can't be anything anyway. So people are still scared. There's a lot of laughter. And I talk about the gremlins. I always carry gremlins around. The gremlins in your head that are going to be telling you, this sucks, it should be better, whatever negative self-critical voices are going to be going on in your head. Notice those voices. And, if a voice is telling you that it should be better or wanting to apologize for it or trying to make it better, resist that urge to make it better. Let it be crappy. And this relates to, I have a framework called the Create the Impossible framework. And this relates to step 2 of the framework, which is make crap. When my keynote, which is my Creating the Impossible keynote, I actually walk people through this actual exercise. And I tell them to dismiss the urge to try and make it better. You are intentionally letting yourself make something, crappy. We're making imperfectly perfect something. And so we have the experience of being uncomfortable making something crappy. And what happens is then they've made their doodle, we hold it up, we talk about that. And then I break them into small groups or pairs where they get to share what this doodle represents. And they start to have some insights around that, which is often very surprising to people, what they learn about what they've just doodled on their paper. And then I have them hold up their crappy doodle and talk about, did anybody, it works best when it's not just a pair, when they've been able to share with multiple people, and talk about, did anybody observe when they looked at somebody else's doodle, did you see something insightful, interesting, or valuable in somebody else's doodle? Often people have seen something because they've heard the story. They haven't just seen the sketches. They've seen something insightful, interesting, or valuable in somebody else's doodle. And then looking at your own doodle, did you have some kind of self-criticism, self-judgment? Gee, I wish it were better. 98% of the time, there's some kind of, something like that going on. There's those gremlin voices, right? So here's the thing. Other people see your work for what it is. You see your work for what it isn't. Because when you're looking at your own work, you're seeing not just what's there, you're also seeing the platonic ideal of what you were trying to create, but you weren't quite able to make that. So you're also seeing the gap in between. I call that looking through your gremlin glasses. And when you look at other people's work, you don't see that. All you see is what's there. You don't see the platonic ideal. You don't see the gap in between. So then I have them take off those gremlin glasses and put on neutral glasses so they can look at their doodle that they just made as if someone else made it. And then notice, what do you see that's different when you're looking at your own work as if someone else made it? And write down one thing that they notice that's different. Maybe it's an insight. Maybe they're able to connect some dots that they weren't able to connect before. Or maybe they just notice that, it's kind of interesting looking. It's kind of cute. Or maybe it's like, wow, this is kind of like something I might find hanging in the Museum of Modern Art, that I didn't notice that before. So they start to see things in a different way. So that's often the biggest takeaway for people, is that when they can start to look at whatever it is they're making, whether it's a crappy doodle or anything else in their lives, when they can start to look at their own work through neutral lenses rather than through their gremlin glasses, they can see themselves as creative, as opposed to, oh, I just suck.
I love so much about that. The concept of lowering the bar to help people build up. Like if you, right now I'm coaching a 7-year-old football team. Talk about like a headache waiting to happen.
Amazing.
It's fun. I really do enjoy it. And there's one particular child that several times has said, I don't want to play on this side of the ball because I suck at it. And I have to kneel down in front of him and put my hands on his shoulders and be like, dude, it's impossible to suck at something you've never done before. We're learning it. Nobody is born good. Nobody just walked out here good. We're learning it. We don't suck at anything. We're developing the skill along the way.
Yeah.
So, and adults don't think a lot different than 7-year-olds more often than we would
Yeah.
like to believe, or less often than we'd like to believe. So by lowering the bar and be like, hey, let's make it fun. It's supposed to suck 60 seconds. Just go do it. Now we're taking that stress away, like adding the humor to it, making it a little bit easier for people, lowering the expectations. But that then creates a sense of freedom. The freedom leads to the sense of expression. The expression leads to the vulnerability, which leads to the breakthrough moments. And by starting out intentionally bad, any improvements over that look better. Now we're reframing their perspective, making it easier for them. There's so much genius in that approach. I love it. And just some of the things you said in there too, like people see our work for what it is. We see it for what it isn't. Well, I'm guilty. Like when you said 98% of the people find error or problems, or however you said it, in their own work, my thought was that number seems low.
Yeah, well, it's actually 100.
like 98 might seem high, but I think that seems low. I think it might be closer to 100. But that's generally, like, we're our own toughest critic. And when that own inner voice, our gremlins, looking through the gremlin glasses, starts to dictate how we think and how we perform, it's a downhill. And so being able to highlight other people see value in teaching people to look at their own work as much as we can through that neutral lens, look at it as if somebody else did it. As I've been taking notes the whole time you were talking, that's one of the things I put a star next to, like even for myself, can I start to look at things that I do as if somebody else did it? There'll be that critic will still be there, but it will likely be a little bit more understanding and forgiving than the way I normally talk to myself. I've got no less than probably 6 follow-up questions that I wanted to ask, but I've got to start. You said you've got the 4-step framework. You gave us step 2. So who would I be if I didn't come back and ask, if you don't mind, just walking through that 4-step framework for us?
Yeah, it's 3 steps. So the first step is play hard. And this does not mean to go to Vegas and get wild. It's not that. It means to embrace your inner 4-year-old. It means to be open to experimentation and play. Follow your curiosity about whatever you're engaged with. So really, it's get into that mind space of being a little kid again. That's what play hard is all about. And, whatever we're engaged with, if we can be in that little kid mind space, which, is really hard for a lot of us when we're spending so much of our lives just, adulting and showing up and putting on that suit, it's so important to be in the mind space of what would happen if. Let's try this. That's what play hard is all about. That's step 1. So step 2, we've talked about the make crap, lowering the bar. We have to let ourselves make crap because we need the crap to fertilize the good stuff. We're never going to get to the good stuff if we don't, first fertilize it with some crap. So that's step 2. And then step 3 is learn fast. Use, all of that crap that we've made, all of those attempts that have, given us some data, we're going to iterate from that. We're going to use all of those experiences as opportunities to learn and iterate. And this is a repeatable process. So we're ideally constantly in one step or more at all times, and just continually cycling around. And being in this framework at all times leads to breakthroughs and innovations.
I imagine it does.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's stuck over you. I apologize.
Oh, no. That was it, really.
No, I believe it does. And even when I think back to when you're talking about the make crappy doodles, whatever you say it is, it is. And for me, as like a communicator, well, we're all communicators, right? But I guess someone that nerds out on communication. To me, that equates to like accepting somebody else's reality. So if I'm talking to somebody else, a great way to tank this entire conversation is if I refuse to accept your reality the way you see it. Like if there has to be a right or wrong, a good, a bad, a smart or dumb, whatever, then I'm going to tank this whole thing. But if I can accept somebody else's reality the way I see it, which doesn't mean I have to agree with it, now I can start building bridges and moving things forward. So when you say, whatever you say it is, it is. It doesn't matter. You tell me that's a spaceship, that's a spaceship. By getting in that play hard mentality, it makes it easier for people to accept a different reality, so to speak, or an imaginative reality might be a better way to say it. And now if we're playing and we accept that imaginative reality, now it's easier to take the gremlin glasses off. It is easier to continue to iterate because it's not, I've tried this 10 times and I can't get it right.
Yeah.
I've been messing with this for 10 times and it's starting to actually look like a spaceship to the average person on the street. So my perception from the outside is that framework makes it not only easy, but acceptable for us to go through the process to get to eventually the end result we're trying to create.
Yeah. Well, and the end result, you also might realize, oh, I thought I was going to this end result, but now I realize because I've been going through this iterative process that actually it makes more sense if I go over in this direction instead.
Yes, I love it. That you talk about learn fast. I learned something I didn't expect. It's getting out of that validation mentality and kicking into that learning mentality. Oh, right. I didn't expect to see that. Let me pull that string. Let me go in that direction. Let me see where it leads us. So earlier you teased around a little bit too, the conversation for problem solving. And I agree. From the outside looking in, I feel like the processes of creativity and problem solving, if you put them on a Venn diagram, might look like a circle. I mean, they're always interplay there. And you did a really good job earlier illustrating what creativity can mean beyond just singing and dancing and music and performance and drawing and some of those things that you have all done very well at different points in your life. I have not. When we look at problem solving, I like to start trying to think of focus on solution, not problems, focus on what you do have, not what you don't have, and build that forward momentum going forward. I wouldn't hesitate to argue that's probably more of a logical approach and less of a creative approach. So, and everybody that knows me just went, yeah, of course, dude. So how do you layer in creativity with problem solving to help people get to those aha breakthrough moments?
Okay, so ask that in a different way, because I just got like, I was so focused on thinking about problem solving in terms of my art. And because here's where my head was going. I was thinking of when I was a professional artist, mm-hmm. or even now if I'm like writing a song, or it's a little bit different if I'm going off on a bit of a tangent as I'm thinking the art that I'm making now, which is purely improvisational. Mm-hmm. And when I improvise with my improv group, it's a little bit different. So now I'm going to have to revise what my thinking. But here's where I was going. When I was a professional artist and I would be presented with a project by a client or doing work on my own, I would have an idea in my head. This is the, there needs to be a tree and it has to have these different elements in it. And it has to have this much, the text, it has to have this much text, has to fit in the So there would be basically a brief, and I would have to somehow, make everything work, and I'd have to have these many colors or, whatever. And I'd have to get all the elements in a certain way, and it would have to be aesthetically pleasing in the way that make sense to me. So I was solving visual problems essentially. So in that regard, it was problem solving.
For sure.
And now, like when I write a song, let's talk about it in that way. I come up with, say, a hook or some kind of an idea, some sort of a phrase, a melody, a concept that I want to get across. And this is how I write songs. Other people might write songs differently. And I come up with some kind of a kernel, and then I like build out from there. So it's basically I come up with some sort of a pattern, and then I have to continue creating additional pieces that fit that same pattern. So again, it's like I'm solving a problem. I have this pattern, I have to fit more things into it and build it out. So it's I'm solving this problem. Now, when I make art, it's a little bit different because although it does fit a little bit the same way, because now I start with a blank page and I just make a mark. And then I just respond to the mark. I'm basically doing one solo improv with a blank piece of paper and a pen. And, or, you know, that's how I'm doing it now because I'm limited on time. But, at other times in my life, it might be a blank piece of paper and some watercolor and a brush and, a palette of different colors or something like that. And I'm just responding like, okay, there's something on the page and I'm responding to that and I'm responding to that and I'm responding to that and I'm responding to that. So it's yes and, the improv concept of yes and. There's a thing, there's an offer, and I'm building on that offer. So I'm having to sort of modify. Now, is that problem solving? I'm not sure. And to some degree, it is in that the way that the particular way that I like to create shapes and lines and colors and things on a page is I really like sort of theme and variations. So it is like building patterns. Is it solving a problem? I mean, it is in the sense that I'm filling space. So the problem is, how do I fill this space in a pleasing way? So I guess it is problem solving in a sense. I don't know. I'm answering a question. I'm improvising and answering my own question here.
No, and you're doing a good job. I would argue that it is problem solving for anybody that cares about my perspective on it. And for me, I love the concept of the offer. Everything that happens is the offer. And I choose how I respond to that. And my response becomes the next offer, which then creates another response, which is the following offer. And it's this never ending chain of offers. So I've never done improv. I don't want to act like I know what I'm talking about beyond just a casual understanding. But even performing with an improv group, the problem we're trying to solve is a funny and entertaining story for the audience that they get drawn into and laugh and enjoy and appreciate. And I'm sure that you and your group have fun together while you do it and enjoy the process. For art, whether it is writing songs or painting pictures, that I love what you talked about, theme and variation. Yeah, we're working within patterns. I have a theme. There's variations on that theme. I'm sure there's been plenty of times, as I make more assumptions here, that you've been writing a song and maybe you were working on the melody or the theme or the hook, whatever it was, but then you had an idea that didn't fit. And either that changed the direction of the song or became a separate song that you worked on after. And so when I hear like this approach to problem solving, it's less of a on the whiteboard, step 1, 2, 3, 4 problem solving process. It's conceptually, we understand where we need to go, and we are going to let the process of getting there help create what the final destination or solution looks like. We're going to get to where we need to get, but we're going to allow the process to help with design, so to speak, as opposed to fitting in the design to the process. And that's something that's been shared with me different times in different places. And you've added layers to that today, but that's not like a native way for me to think. Like, I was brought up the way my brain worked was just very logical. Well, we have to get to step 10. We're at step 1. So let's go to step 2. Well, what if there's a way to get from step 1 to step 10 directly? And what if I just kind of touch 7 and I'm there? Like, so I do believe what I'm extrapolating from the example is that when the process helps create the design, then we strip away these gremlins, we strip away these
Yes.
limitations, and
Yeah.
now we can be more immersed in what we're creating.
Yeah. And in fact, that improvising in that way, what you've just described essentially is the improvisation process, which conflates the process, the design, the implementation. It brings it all together into one process in one piece. And I intentionally moved in that direction in order to kind of as an antidote to my own perfectionism, because I was such a diehard perfectionist to my own detriment. I mean, I was so miserable and I was so paralyzed by perfectionism and so caught in the comparison trap and just, I mean, I was miserable, Michael. And for 10 years, while I was making my living as a professional artist, which is the holy grail of being an artist, right? So many artists are like, oh, if I could only make a living from my art, I would be so happy. I was miserable because I bought into a story unconsciously that everything I made had to make money. Everything I made had to be amazing. And so the only art I ever made, pretty much for 10 years, was for clients. And I almost never made anything for myself, except like once a year when I would go on a retreat with my calligraphy guild. It was so miserable. And so as a way to counteract that, when I finally started getting back to making art for myself, I very intentionally just I started improvising. I stopped making the way that I had been working for like my whole artistic life pretty much had been this very meticulous, designy, planned out, oh my God, it was just like very rigid. And I just went the complete like polar opposite direction. And the pendulum was swung the completely opposite way. And I just would get out a blank piece of paper and just like splash a bunch of paint around on it and just let the paint dry where it would and then respond to it. And it was completely improvisational. Make an offer, respond to the offer, make an offer, respond to the offer, make an offer, respond to the offer. And then I would say, well, what letters want to go on there? And then I would use very, very free kind of lettering, not put any guidelines on it, and which is very different from the kind of work that I had been doing for clients, which was very formal, very rigid. And it was so liberating. And in fact, eventually I pulled away from the lettering altogether. And the work that I'm doing now, first of all, it's very minimal because I'm just not giving myself enough time to make art these days, which is another story. But it's just like I take a pen, I make marks on paper. It's totally abstract, no lettering, no nothing. It's just it's wild. And when I first started making art like this, Michael, I thought, what the hell is this? It's so ugly. It's so weird. And now I look at it, I'm like, this is so fun. It's so I love that I'm doing this like whimsical, weird, wacky stuff that I never would have allowed myself to do, 15, 20 years ago when I wanted to just be like, make pretty calligraphy, make it very, formal. And anyway, all that is to say that I realized that bringing the design and the actual creation of the art together in one process works really well for me because I can't, it fools my gremlins. And I get like, I get really bored, but like, I love the design part. And then when I have to go execute it, it becomes very tedious. So when it's all together in one fell swoop,
Makes it easier.
it's much more fun.
You said so many powerful things in there, and arguably the most powerful was allowing yourself to do it. And I feel like for many of us, most certainly myself included, the amount of things that we could experience, achieve, innovate, break through, if we would just allow ourselves to take the risk, to make the mistakes, to earn that breakthrough, to go through the process. Because the process alone is going to teach us so much about ourselves and what we're capable of and what we can do. So that just breaking through that limitation of what we allow ourselves to do, I think was an extremely powerful statement that sort of got woven in into to the whole story. So I thought that was fantastic and worth calling out. And it also sounds like sometimes, and I can speak just from my perspective, if I'm designing a training program or if I'm writing something or whatever it is, the design part almost feels like a job in itself.
Mm-hmm.
And then once the design is done, now I have to go execute.
Mm-hmm.
And those almost feel like two completely different jobs.
Yeah.
So when the design part, like I get the energy to design, that's done. Now it's like, okay, my brain shuts off. Boom, mission complete. Oh, wait, the mission's not complete. It's like less than halfway done. Now I need to go execute and I need to go through. It's like I need to ramp myself up again. This is going to be the lamest or weirdest analogy you've ever heard in your entire life. But it's like interrogating people. One of the mistakes that gets made often in that world is you create a bond with somebody, you lead them through a conversation, they open up, they're vulnerable, they tell you in detail about their regrettable decisions, but then we need them to write it down. And one of the mistakes that gets made is whether it's said directly or suggested at the end of the interrogation, something is said like, well, I think that's enough for today. I really appreciate it. Thank you for being honest with me. Now that we're done talking about it, it's time to write it down. And it wouldn't be said necessarily like that. But by saying we're done talking, now it's time to write. It's like that wall comes down. And now the person who was committed to the conversation is like, well, wait a minute, I don't want to write. That's like a whole new thing. I just went through experience 1. I don't want to go through experience 2. But when we're able to make it seem like a natural transition, thank you so much for everything you shared today. I really appreciate it. Your honesty goes a long way. Thank you for treating me with so much respect. The next step in the process is 2. Now that when we approach it that way, there's typically much less resistance because it's the next step in the process. And so to try to bring this most random analogy ever home, when I hear you talking about blending the design and the execution, instead of it being 1, now 2, it's just this one free-flowing experience that gets you through. And from the outside listening, I feel like art is perception-based, right? So somebody might look at a painting and say, it's great. I might look at it and say, what's that? Or somebody might hear a song and say, that moves me. And I might hear it and say, is that noise? And vice versa, of course. I don't expect people like a lot of the stuff that I listen to or that I like. But to me, it sounds like you actually, in some way, rewired your own perception for art based on the process that you went through. Like, I'm sure you still like similar arts. You didn't like change yourself, but you rewired your own perception in how you went through that process, which I think is fantastic. So I got to ask for a friend, of course. How did you overcome your own perfectionism? That's a Mount Everest of battles that we all deal with.
Well, okay. So first of all, there's an assumption in there, Michael, that I have completely rewired my relationship to perfectionism. I will say for the record that is an ongoing process. And I will also say that I have made tremendous strides in that rewiring, in that process. And I remember having a conversation with a master calligrapher, one of my total hero calligraphers. I was at a retreat workshop thing in North Carolina, actually. God, it was decades ago now. And this is somebody who is, one of the stars in the industry. And somebody who's just like, oh my God, I'll never be that good, that kind of thing. And he was, teaching at this event and was having a meal with him. And I remember two things about that conversation. One, I remember saying something to him uh, about how to the I don't know, in the vein of him, but I don't know that I said it that that it was him, but like he was, he's like a hero. I could never be as good as him or something like that. But I don't know that it was clearly it was him, but I don't know that I said that it was him. And he said something like, well, Melissa, other people might be looking at you that way, which I had never thought about. And I also remember being in a place in my life where I was thinking about trying to let go of perfectionism, but feeling like if I let go of perfectionism, that would mean that I would be allowing myself to be mediocre. That letting go of perfectionism would be like settling, would be that I wasn't going to be striving for excellence anymore, that they would be one and the same, and trying to reconcile those things. Like, how can I let go of perfectionism and not allow myself to just become a puddle of mediocrity or something? And I just couldn't figure out, like, but it was in that, like, I was struggling in that moment. And I don't remember the timeline, but sometime after that, I was introduced to the concept of self-compassion. And that really was absolutely key for me. And I was introduced to the work of Dr. Kristin Neff, whose book called Self-Compassion was absolutely transformative for me. So Dr. Kristin Neff is the world's foremost researcher on self-compassion. And I thought I understood the concept of self-compassion before that, but I really didn't. And self-compassion is really composed of three components. The first is mindfulness, the ability to really step outside your experience and view it from the outside and, have this external, separation from it. And the second is an understanding, appreciation of common humanity, that, you're not the only one who's going through whatever experience you're experiencing right now, feeling bad about something that happened or that you did or whatever. You're not the only person who's ever experienced that. Many people have gone through something similar. And then the third is self-kindness, the ability to, self-soothe, physically, emotionally, speak to yourself kindly, oh, sweetie, it's okay. I still love you, whatever, to just be kind to yourself. So really practicing those three components makes a huge difference. And I now, as a result of practicing self-compassion very intentionally, I call myself an intentional imperfectionist. And so that does not mean that I'm like sloppy, It does not mean that I allow mediocrity. It means that I practice self-compassion and that I forgive myself for being human. And I got to tell you, Michael, the grass is so much greener on this side. And I still aim for excellence. I still aim to achieve mastery in the things that are important to me. But I am not miserable, trying to being a perfectionist and refusing to allow myself to take risks because I don't want to, I'm so afraid of failing or whatever. I spent so many years like not being able to try to make new pieces of art or enter art into shows or things like that because of perfectionism. And I still find myself realizing like, oh my God, I'm getting caught up in a fear and not letting myself try something. There's a gremlin again, a perfectionist gremlin. Well, hello, gremlin. I'm going to send you off to get a pedicure. And, I still find it happening, but I'm so much better at recognizing it now and shutting it down.
That recognition is so important. And we can't recognize something if we're not aware that it's an issue or where it comes from or what it means. And that's in all facets of our lives. That recognition piece is so important. And I think the point that you made that I hope everyone really latches on to is letting go of perfectionism does not mean accepting mediocrity or subpar results. And I have to imagine that so many people, and there's times where I fall into the same trap too, get focused on perfectionism and rationalize perfectionism. The way they rationalize it is, if I let go of perfectionism, which likely translates to if I let go to this fear-based need for control, then I'm going to be accepting something that's below my standards and I can't do that. Therefore, I'll continue to rationalize this unhealthy behavior that I've identified that I have. So for you to make all of those recognitions and have that evolution says a lot about you and your level of introspection. And I think that probably ties very well into how you teach people to reach inside themselves and unlock their own creativity and see potential in power that they likely didn't realize that they had. And one of the threads that I feel like I pulled out of that I think ties back into the creativity and the problem solving, and please tell me how wrong I may be with this, is sometimes the very best thing we can do is make a mistake. Because not only does that show effort and iteration and creativity and all these things, but we tend to learn more from our mistakes than we do our successes. And there's a very unique moment of vulnerability when we make mistakes. And how we speak with ourselves, how we pick ourselves up, how we work through it. And then if we're a leader, certainly how we help other people through their mistakes, how we react, how we respond, how we connect, those kinds of things. But the mistakes create these very unique, vulnerable moments where exponential growth can come from. And I'm curious how that lines up with your process as you help people unlock their inner creativity to achieve this innovation or you used a different word, I'm forgetting it, but the unexpected levels of innovation, the breakthrough moments. How does that, for lack of a better phrase, like leveraging the mistakes approach line up with your work?
Oh, absolutely. It absolutely lines up. I mean, so I was just at the National Speakers Association annual conference about a week ago in Scottsdale, and I can't even tell you how many talks had some component of this exact thing about mistakes or failure or whatever lead to success. They're not, contrary to success. They're not, the opposite of success. We need those failures. We need those mistakes. One of the speakers, actually a surprise panelist, was Matthew Knowles, Beyonce's father, manager, whatever, who one of the memorable things that he mentioned was, what is the now I'm forgetting the name of the band that Beyonce was in before she spun off on her own.
Destiny's Child, right?
Destiny's Child. Thank you. So they were in Star Search and they didn't win. They lost on Star Search. And he was sharing how those ladies were sobbing. They were so incredibly upset and distressed when they didn't win on Star Search. And he went on to share how not one artist who has won on Star Search has ever gone on to be successful. And their loss on Star Search made them work so much harder. And we all know what happened. They went on to become phenomenally successful.
Yeah, they did okay.
They did okay. They learned from that experience and they dug in, and he learned from that experience and he dug in and he took all sorts of, classes and whatever on branding. And he ended up becoming this phenomenal expert on branding, which is what helped lead to their and Beyonce's and a whole bunch of other people's phenomenal, Beyonce's a billionaire.
Like I said, she did okay.
She did okay.
She probably look back and say, I got it right.
Yeah.
That's a great example.
Yeah.
That's a great example on I don't know if they necessarily made a mistake, but how the lack of success or the lack of achievement and making an outright mistake can create the building blocks for significant learning, significant innovation, significant improvement. And if we can not only recognize that in ourselves, but recognize that in others, not killing them for their mistakes, not telling them that their doodle doesn't look like a spaceship, even little things can go a long way. We had a football practice last night, and we've been working with my son on his running, and he's gotten a lot faster. And we have an assistant coach that probably isn't the best. I'm being very polite and talking to kids. And he was trying to motivate the kids to run faster. And he walked by Gabe and he said, "You're not running as fast as you can." Now I'm looking at him going, actually, that's as fast as I've ever seen him run. And when we were done, Gabe was talking to me in the truck on the ride home that after the coach said that to him, he couldn't stop thinking about it and was running slower after.
Oh, no.
Now, I mean, we're talking about running sprints at the end of a football practice. It's not like the end of the world, and there's time for Gabe and I to talk through it and work through it. But often we don't realize as leaders, to your point, how highlighting the negative or highlighting mistakes actually often doesn't motivate people. It gets them focusing on the wrong thing, which creates more limitations and negative self-talk and removes their ability to play hard and to learn fast and to set the bar low and to build from it. So it's everything you said today resonates and works together so very well. I know you have new projects coming up. So please, if you can, take us a couple of minutes. Let us know what you're working on, what you have coming up, and for everybody that enjoyed this conversation, how they can connect with you and continue to learn from you.
Well, thank you for asking, Michael. Yes, well, I'm super excited about the keynoting that I've been doing. I have a keynote called Creating the Impossible, where I dive deep on my Create the Impossible framework. And I'm also really excited about a book that I'm working on right now. I'm pulling up my notebook right now because I've been brainstorming on title ideas. And
you heard it here first.
So the placeholder title is Innovation at Work. And it is going to be 52 creative problem-solving activities that boost team problem solving. And I'm super excited about it. So I'm having a lot of fun writing it. So it's really the idea is that you can either work through one activity a week, or you can just sort of flip through it and, pick an activity at random, however you want to do it. But it's divided into 4 different sections. Each section has a different theme. And I'm just having so much fun putting it together. And I think it'll be a really great resource for team leaders.
That's awesome. And when it comes out, please let us know so we can come back and dive through those 52 and pick out some of your favorites and highlights and talk about how they work. So for people who want to connect with you online, where do they need to go?
Well, the best place to reach me is always my website, which is my name, melissadinwiddie.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn. I post there all the time. I'm posting tips, creativity ideas and resources and things like that. And I also post videos once a week on YouTube. You can also find me there at my name, Melissa Dinwiddie. And you can follow my doodles and other things over on Instagram. This one breaks the pattern. My handle there is A_creative_life. And also, I have put together for your podcast listeners a free 1-page checklist that gives you a quick, practical way to unlock fresh ideas and spark innovation fast, especially if you think you're not the creative type. And I have a special bit.ly link. It is bit.ly/ISWYS. Thank you, all lowercase. So that's for, I see what you're saying. Thank you.
I like how you did that.
bit.ly/ISWYS. Thank you. Oh, and I have a QR code. There we go.
Oh, awesome. Even easier. I was going to say, I'll put all the links in the show notes, which I still will, but now that QR code makes it even easier. Very well done. Well, I can't thank you enough for the conversation today, learning from your perspective, your experience, how you've really transformed yourself and still are in multiple ways, and how that allows you to really connect with people and help them unlock their inner creativity, create their impossible, continue to innovate and solve problems. I appreciate all that you shared with us today, and I really look forward to keeping in touch.
Thank you so much, Michael. It's been so much fun being on your show. I really appreciate you having me.
Thank you. Melissa, thank you for a wonderful conversation. I really appreciate all that you shared. I appreciate you being so open with us. I took a bunch of notes, and I really appreciate the perspective that you bring on how we can all talk to ourselves differently, look at ourselves differently, look at problems differently in order to be more successful in finding solutions, whether they were the solutions we thought we were setting out to find or not. Of all the things I appreciate, it's hard to say, but I might appreciate the most how you talked about being an intentional imperfectionist. There were so many lessons to learn from that example. Thank you so much for sharing it with us. I also appreciated how in the very beginning you talked about how we're all creative by virtue of being human beings. We all have that ability. We just have to see it in ourselves to bring it through. I also thought it was a tremendous example when you talked about the power of making crappy scribbles, lowering the bar, making it fun, accepting somebody else's version of reality, building on it together. That was fantastic. And your point about stop looking through gremlin glasses, well, I clearly need to hear that more often. A tremendous conversation. Thank you so much for all you shared. I'm looking forward to your next book and talking to you about it. Really appreciate you being here today. And thank you to everybody that took the time to listen to the show. We appreciate you coming back week after week for all of these conversations. I sincerely hope you're continuing to learn as much as I am every time out. While you're here, please just take a quick moment, like the show, subscribe to the show, certainly share it with your network, and leave us your feedback. What would you like to hear more or less of? Who would you like to see us have on? We'd love to hear from you. And of course, before you leave the internet today, please take a couple of minutes and visit our sponsors. Head over to humantel.com. That's where you can learn more about how to identify when people's emotions are likely shifting by identifying shifts, changes in their nonverbal communication and facial expressions. They have the best-in-class online training. I've done it myself. I vouch for it. When you're there, enter the code INQUASIVE25 for 25% off their best-in-class training. For the professional interviewers, head over to certifiedinterviewer.com. That is where you can learn everything you need to know about the Certified Forensic Interviewer designation, who qualifies, how do you pass the exam, what do you do to maintain the exam, what can it mean for your career. That's also where you can learn about the International Association of Interviewers, all of their contribution opportunities, online events, in-person events, everything you can get from the organization, and more importantly, all the opportunities you have to contribute to the organization. And finally, while you're online, please head over to inquasive.com. That's where you can learn more about the programs our clients ask us to customize for their senior leaders and sales teams in order to teach them how to uncover the everyday confessions that are hiding in all of their high impact conversations. We really appreciate you being here for another week. Thank you so much. Stay safe, take care of each other, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.